If you ever found yourself drifting down the Alabama coast in the summer of '52, there's a fair chance you passed through a sleepy beach town called Gulf Haven. Back then, it wasn't much more than a bend in the road and a pier that creaked louder than the waves. But if you turned off the main drag, right past the Gulf gas station and the Baptist church with the always broken bell, you'd spot a little white storefront with hand-painted letters above the window. Kemp's Malt Shop. Home of the best chocolate float in Baldwin County, at least that's what Daddy used to say. I'm Ella Kemp. I was 15 years old the summer my father opened that malt shop, just a few years after he came home from the war. We weren't what you'd call wealthy. Our house had peeling paint and the kitchen smelled like dish soap and fried bologna. But we had each other, and we had that shop. It was nothing fancy. Just 4 red booths, 6 counter stools, and a jukebox that only worked if you slapped it twice and gave it a pep talk. But it had a soul. You could feel it when the fan squeaked overhead or when the malt machine let out that sweet hum right before the milkshake peaked just right. Daddy built it with his own 2 hands and some borrowed lumber. He didn't have a business degree or a real plan. What he had was a limp from Normandy, a pocket notebook full of flavor ideas, and a belief that folks still needed simple places to feel normal again. After World War II, he said, people wanted 3 things: quiet, ice cream, and kindness. He was right. The first week we opened, we had kids lined up down the block. Barefoot, sunburned, with nickels in their palms and freckles across their noses. I'd never worked a register before, but Daddy just said, smile like you're giving away gold, and don't forget to say thank you. We had regulars by week 2. There was old Mr. Jennings, who wore the same seersucker suit every Wednesday and ordered a vanilla malt, with just a whisper of cinnamon. There was Ruthie Langston, who came in every afternoon after her shift at the phone company, her lips always red, her laugh louder than the ceiling fan. And then there was the Navy boy, James, from out of town, who sat at the far stool by the window, never ordered more than a cherry Coke, and always tipped with quarters even though he barely said a word. You could feel it in the air, this little shop was becoming part of the town's rhythm. Part of that golden age you hear about when folks talk about 1950s America: malt shops, jukeboxes, soda fountains, good manners, and even better root beer. But we weren't in some postcard-perfect version of history. We were just real people doing our best in a worn-down town that was trying to remember how to smile after a hard decade. I remember one Tuesday in July. It was hot, southern Alabama hot, the kind that sticks to your skin and makes the air feel like soup. I just finished wiping down the counter for the 4th time when Daddy came out of the back room with a new recipe in his hand and excitement in his step. That's when I knew something was about to happen. Peach pie malt, he said. Is that a thing? I asked. It is now, he winked. He mixed one right there in front of me: vanilla ice cream, peach syrup, graham cracker crumbs, a touch of cinnamon. Handed me the first glass. I took one sip and smiled like I was back on Grandma's porch with a paper fan and nothing to do but watch clouds roll in. That night, we sold 16 of them. The next day, 32. By the end of the week, a handwritten sign above the counter read: Peach pie malt, born right here. Daddy was proud. But more than that, he looked peaceful. For the first time since he got back from Europe, there was something in his eyes that wasn't shadowed by what he'd seen over there. The malt shop gave him a reason to show up. Gave him back a piece of himself the war had taken. Mama used to say, that shop saved your father's soul one milkshake at a time. I think she was right. Of course, not everything was sweet. Behind the syrup pumps and glass straws, there were cracks. We heard rumors that a big chain soda parlor was coming to the boardwalk. New. Bright. Clean. Air-conditioned. Flashy uniforms. Full menu. They had money. We had heart. But sometimes heart don't pay the ice bill. Daddy didn't say much about it. Just stayed up later fixing things that didn't really need fixing. He'd go outside after midnight, sit on the porch swing, and watch the traffic that wasn't there. Do you think they'll shut us down? I asked once. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, some people want shiny. Others want familiar. We just gotta hope the right ones walk through our door. That was Daddy for you. Not one for long speeches. Just the kind of man who'd show up early, mop the floor himself, and remember how every customer liked their malt, even if it had been years. And me? I was growing up behind that counter. While other girls were at the beach, I was folding paper hats and stocking paper straws. I knew how to unclog a syrup pump, how to reset the register tape, and how to spot a broken heart across the counter. I was 15 and in love, with the place, with the smell of sugar in the air, with the way Daddy called me kiddo, even when I knew more about inventory than he did. I didn't say it out loud, but I started to dream. Dream that maybe one day, I'd run the shop. Maybe repaint the sign, add a fifth booth. Play music from newer records, maybe let the jukebox choose itself for once. But that was still far off. For now, it was summer. And we had work to do. We were halfway through the summer of '52 when the trouble started rolling in, not like thunder, but like the slow creep of sand into your shoes. You don't notice it at first, but eventually it makes walking harder. The chain shop opened on the pier. Benny's Fountain Cafe. Air-conditioned. Stainless steel countertops. Neon signs that blinked, new flavor every day. Their waitresses wore pink uniforms and white roller skates. They played the latest hits, real 1950s jukebox stuff, Elvis, Hank Williams, Patti Page, and loud. It felt like the future was here, and we were still stirring malt by hand. That first weekend, our traffic dropped. Not all at once, but just enough to make the shop feel too quiet between orders. I remember Daddy standing behind the counter, wiping a glass that was already clean. He didn't say anything. Just stared out the front window like he was watching something walk away he couldn't stop. Maybe we should advertise, I offered. He gave me half a smile. People don't need ads for places they feel at home in. He was proud, my daddy. Too proud to hang banners. Too proud to cut prices. Too proud to admit he was scared. But I could see it in the way he stayed after closing, staring at the old ledger. Or the way he left the porch swing still on humid nights. One Thursday afternoon, I took matters into my own hands. I made a sign on cardboard and set it outside the shop. Milkshakes that matter. Stories that stick. It wasn't much, but it made a few people smile. One of them was Mrs. June Radisson, our oldest customer, 84 years old and sharper than any knife in the kitchen. She came in that afternoon, tapped the sign with her cane, and said, "Well, I like that. You can't taste love in neon." She ordered a root beer float and gave me a wink. That day, we got more customers than we had in 2 weeks. Not many, but just enough to feel alive again. That night, Mama sat at the dinner table longer than usual. "You know," she said, "when we opened this place, it wasn't for money." Daddy grunted. "It wasn't for charity either." She smiled. "It was because people need each other. And sometimes, sharing a malt is easier than saying what you really feel." She looked at me. "Ella, maybe you ought to write something up. About the shop. A little story. Put it in the town paper." Me? I wasn't much of a writer. But I had learned something. people didn't come to Kemp's just for ice cream. They came because someone knew their name. Because someone remembered they liked their soda light on the fizz. Because this wasn't just a malt shop. It was a memory in the making. So I sat down that weekend and wrote the first thing I'd ever really tried to write. It wasn't fancy. But it was honest. I titled it, "The Corner That Still Feels Like Home." The paper ran it that Tuesday. And by Wednesday, people started drifting back in. Not crowds. Not lines. But steady feet. Familiar faces. People who didn't need flashing lights to feel seen. One night, near closing, I spotted James, the Navy boy, sitting alone, as always. He didn't look at me. Just sipped his cherry Coke, stared out the window. Finally, I brought him a napkin. On it, I'd scribbled, "You always sit at the same stool." "Why?" He looked at it, folded it once, twice. Then finally said, "Because my brother sat here before he shipped out." 1943. I stood still. He didn't look up. He never came home. I come by when I can. Just to remember him. He loved cherry Coke. I nodded and left him be. Next day, I placed a note on the wall behind that stool. Reserved for the ones we remember. It stayed there till the day we closed. That summer taught me more than any school year ever could. I learned how much you could read in someone's silence. I learned that malt shops weren't just about sugar, they were about stories. About connections. About family. About grief and healing and memory. Daddy never said it out loud, but I knew he was proud of what we were building, even if Benny's had more customers, flashier lights, louder music. Because we had something they couldn't buy. We had belonging. But time doesn't stop just because you want it to. By late August, the weather turned sticky again. The fans could barely keep up. Mama got a cough she couldn't shake. And Daddy started limping more than usual. He'd never complain. But I saw the way he leaned on the counter like it was part of him now. Still, every morning, he unlocked the door. Wiped down the stools. Started the jukebox. And smiled when the regulars walked in like nothing had changed. Because that was the point. Nothing had to change. Not yet. There are summers that fade with time, soft around the edges like a sun-washed photograph. But that summer, the one of 1952, never quite faded for me. It's etched into the cracks of my memory like sugar dried on the side of a malt glass. By September, the nights got cooler, the skies clearer. Tourists thinned out. The pier got quiet. The jukebox at Kemp's Malt Shop played slower tunes, Frankie Lane, Dinah Shore, the kind that made you want to sit a while longer before heading out into the dark. Mama's cough still hadn't gone. And Daddy, well, he'd taken to rubbing his knee more often, quietly, like he thought no one noticed. Business wasn't booming. But it was ours. We had small-town regulars, a shop full of memory, and something Benny's Cafe could never buy, heart. One Saturday morning, I came in early to find Daddy already behind the counter. He was fixing the syrup pump again, even though I knew it worked fine. I thought I'd beat the rust, he smiled. Then he paused, looked at me, and said, "Ella, one day this shop'll be yours." I laughed, thinking he was joking. But he didn't smile back. Just wiped his hands and said, "Places like this, they don't last forever. Not unless someone keeps believing in them." That was the first time I realized, he wasn't building a business, he was building a legacy. We started doing little things to bring people back in. I hand-wrote daily specials with drawings and taped them to the front door. Daddy let me run the jukebox list and add more slow ballads. Mama baked a batch of cherry pie every Friday, and we served it warm with vanilla scoops. We even introduced Memory Mondays. Every customer who shared a story from their childhood got a second scoop for free. People came, and they stayed longer. We heard stories about gasoline rationing, school dances, the first radios, first kisses, last goodbyes. And the shop became more than a place to sit. It became a place to remember. But all stories have their turn. And ours came one October morning. I woke up to the smell of burnt coffee and an empty porch swing. Mama sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. "Your daddy's at the hospital," she said. Turns out his heart had been working harder than any of us knew. He'd collapsed behind the counter while restocking napkins. He survived. But he never came back to the shop. Not really. He tried once. Stood just inside the doorway, looked at the place, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Still smells like root beer." Then he turned and walked back to the car. I took over after that. 15 years old, in an apron 2 sizes too big, trying to keep a dream alive. I ran the register. Cleaned the counters. Stocked the syrup. And each day I kept the same routine he taught me. 1. Turn on the jukebox. 2. Wipe the glass till it shines. 3. Smile like you're giving away gold. 4. Remember people's names. Business wasn't what it used to be. And eventually, the bills outgrew the tips. We lasted 1 more year, then closed the doors for good. No grand farewell. No big announcement. Just one last milkshake. One last mop of the floor. One final thank you as the lights went out. Years later, they turned the building into a surfboard rental place. New paint. New name. New kids behind the counter who didn't know what a malt was. But sometimes, when I pass by on quiet mornings, I swear I hear it. That hum of the machine, the clink of glasses, the soft scrape of a stool on linoleum. And for a moment, it's 1952 again. Daddy's behind the counter. Mama's baking cherry pie. And I'm 15, wiping down the same old glass, watching the town walk by. People think stories like ours are small. But they're not. They're what make up the towns, the memories, the meaning behind places like Kemp's. We didn't change the world. But we gave it a place to sit down for a while. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Cupcake. This story was inspired by real memories from America's small towns. If it reminded you of something, anything, drop it in the comments. Because memories matter. And sometimes, a scoop of ice cream and a simple smile is all it takes to bring them back. Ella.